The dry desert air clung to the earth like an invisible blanket, thick with heat and dust. The only sign of movement was a black SUV tearing through the desolate landscape, kicking up a storm of sand behind it. Inside the vehicle, tension filled the air, heavy, suffocating, electric. 3 masked men sat in the back, their hands gripping rifles, their eyes locked onto the man slumped between them. His wrists were bound tightly behind his back with plastic zip ties, and a thin trickle of blood ran down his temple from a fresh wound above his eyebrow. He was barely conscious, his head swaying slightly with the rough ride. But this wasn't just another victim. This was their biggest mistake. The man they had taken was Raymond Carter. 63 years old. Retired Navy SEAL. A living weapon who had spent decades in navigating some of the most dangerous war zones on Earth. He had led missions in the deadliest corners of the world, trained to survive, escape, and eliminate threats with brutal efficiency. The cartel had no idea who they had just taken. But they would soon find out. Before we continue, if you love gripping stories of survival, action, and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The SUV jolted violently as it hit a deep pothole, slamming Carter's head against the side window. He barely reacted. His body might have been battered, but his mind was already awake, calculating, assessing. 3 men in the back with him. 2 more in the front. That made 5. They were armed, but their grip on their rifles was lazy, undisciplined. Their vests were cheap, barely bulletproof. These weren't elite cartel enforcers, these were disposable foot soldiers. Reckless. Overconfident. And overconfidence was always a weakness. One of the masked men beside him reached out and roughly grabbed Carter's jaw, forcing his face up. "You awake, old man?" The voice was young, cocky. The kind that had never faced real danger, never seen what a man like Carter was capable of. Carter didn't respond. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than words. He had been in worse situations before. Much worse. And he had survived them all. The driver glanced at the rearview mirror. "Boss wants him alive," he muttered. "But if he tries anything, take a piece of him." Carter's expression remained blank, but inside, his mind was already working at full speed. The heat in the car was suffocating, making the scent of sweat and gun oil hang in the air like a warning. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, with no signs of civilization in sight. The cartel had chosen this route for a reason: no witnesses, no interruptions. The vehicle roared forward, deeper into cartel territory. Carter's wrists burned from the tight zip ties, but he ignored the pain. Pain was just another tool, another signal his body sent him. And right now, he had more important things to focus on. He took a slow breath, barely moving. His military training had taught him patience, control. He listened carefully, studying the rhythm of the car, the slight shifts in weight as the men adjusted their positions. He could feel the vibration of the road through the metal floor beneath his boots. Every detail mattered. The man to his right nudged him with the barrel of his rifle. "You deaf, viejo?" He let out a short laugh, nudging Carter again. "You're in deep now. You have no idea what's coming." Oh, but he did. The cartel thought they had captured a helpless old man. But they had just locked themselves in a cage with a predator. And soon, they would realize it. The SUV made a sharp turn, sending Carter's body tilting slightly. He adjusted his breathing. He could feel the zip ties cutting deeper into his wrists, but he had been in this position before. In a dozen different countries. Against enemies far deadlier than these amateurs. The man to his left spoke up. "You know why you're here, old man?" Carter remained silent. The man chuckled. "That's fine. You'll find out soon enough." The SUV finally slowed as they reached an isolated compound, a makeshift base in the middle of the desert. A tall perimeter fence surrounded the area, with armed men patrolling the outside. A few buildings stood inside, their walls covered in graffiti, a sign of the cartel's presence. Carter glanced out the window as the vehicle pulled up to the gate. 2 more guards stood watch, rifles slung over their shoulders. One of them waved the SUV through. As the car rolled inside, Carter took in every detail. Every guard's position. Every weak spot in their defenses. Every opportunity. The cartel thought they had the upper hand. They were dead wrong. The SUV rolled to a stop in the center of the compound, its tires kicking up a cloud of dust that lingered in the scorching desert air. The moment the engine cut off, Carter could hear them, dozens of voices, footsteps, the distant clinking of metal. The place was alive with activity. This wasn't just some temporary hideout. It was a fully operational base. Through the window, he counted at least 15 armed men, scattered throughout the compound. Some leaned against walls, smoking, while others patrolled lazily, their rifles hanging loose in their grips. The guards at the gate had already lost interest in the vehicle, assuming the newcomers were just another routine delivery. But Carter wasn't just another package. The back doors of the SUV were yanked open, and rough hands grabbed him by the shoulders, dragging him out into the blinding sunlight. His boots scraped against the dirt as he stumbled, but he kept his breathing steady. Controlled. He let them think he was weak. He let them believe they had him completely at their mercy. A tall man in a crisp white shirt and dark sunglasses stepped forward, watching Carter with a smirk. He was different from the others, more composed, exuding authority. The man's voice was calm, almost amused. "So, this is the problem my men picked up." Carter didn't respond. He merely lifted his gaze, meeting the man's eyes with a steady, unshaken stare. The man chuckled and turned to the others. "Untie him." The guards hesitated. One of them, the younger one who had taunted Carter earlier, frowned. "Chief, are you sure?" The leader silenced him with a glance. "Do it." A knife flashed in the sunlight as one of the men sliced through Carter's zip ties. The tension in his wrists eased instantly, but he didn't move. Not yet. Timing was everything. The leader took a step closer, hands in his pockets. "You're a tough one, aren't you?" He nodded to the men surrounding them. "Bring him inside." Carter let them guide him, his movements slow, calculated. He was being taken deeper into enemy territory, but that was fine. It just meant he wouldn't have to chase them down when it was time to strike. Inside the main building, the temperature dropped slightly, the thick concrete walls shielding them from the desert sun. The room was sparsely furnished, just a wooden table, a few chairs, and a single flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Carter was forced into a chair, his hands resting on the table, while the leader took a seat across from him. The man removed his sunglasses, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes. "Do you know who I am?" Carter exhaled slowly. "No. And I don't need to." The man smirked. "That's brave." He leaned forward. "My name is Miguel Rojas. I run everything that happens along this stretch of the border. The drugs, the weapons, the people. Nothing moves without my say-so." Carter remained silent. He had dealt with men like this before, calculating, power-hungry. They all believed they were untouchable. Rojas continued. "I know who you are, Mr. Carter. You were supposed to die years ago. But you're still here. That interests me." Carter's expression didn't change, but inside, his mind was already racing. If they knew his name, they had done some digging. But how much did they really know? Rojas stood up and began pacing slowly. "See, the problem is, people talk. And when my men picked you up, they recognized something. The way you carry yourself. The way you observe everything. He stopped, turning back toward Carter. So I did some research. Navy SEAL. Retired. But men like you never really retire, do they? Carter's jaw tightened slightly. Rojas smiled. That's what I thought. The air in the room grew heavier. The guard standing by the door shifted slightly, fingers resting on their triggers. Rojas sighed, as if disappointed. I was hoping you were just some washed-up old man. But now I have a problem. Because if you're who I think you are, that means you're dangerous. Carter finally spoke, his voice calm. You should have left me alone. Rojas chuckled. Oh, Mr. Carter. You misunderstand. I didn't bring you here because I'm afraid of you. I brought you here because I want to make a deal. Carter said nothing, waiting. Rojas leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. You've spent your life working for the wrong side. The government used you, chewed you up, and threw you away. But me? I reward loyalty. I could use a man with your skills. The room went silent. The offer hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Carter's response was simple. Not interested. Rojas sighed dramatically. That's a shame. He gestured to one of his men. Take him to the pit. Carter was yanked to his feet and dragged down a dark corridor, his boots scraping against the cold concrete. He didn't resist. Not yet. He could feel the shift in energy, the guards' grips tightening, their movements growing more aggressive. They were taking him somewhere they didn't expect him to leave. The corridor opened up into an underground chamber, a crude holding cell carved into the earth. The walls were rough stone, the air damp and stale. A single overhead light flickered weakly. The pit was deep, at least 10 feet down, with no ladder. Escape wouldn't be easy. But Carter had never been the type to take the easy way out. The guards shoved him toward the edge. Hope you like it down there, viejo, one of them sneered. Carter didn't even flinch as they pushed him over. He landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact. The dirt beneath him was cold, littered with bones. Animal? Human? It didn't matter. He had been in worse places before. Above, the guards laughed. One of them spat down into the pit before they turned and walked away, their footsteps fading into the darkness. Carter lay still, staring up at the ceiling. He could hear the hum of electricity, the distant murmur of voices. And then, he moved. Slowly, methodically, he pushed himself up, rolling his shoulders to test for injuries. His wrists ached, but they were free. And that was all he needed. He took a deep breath. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. Carter sat in the pit, his breathing slow and steady. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, but he ignored it. He ignored the pain in his wrists, the stiffness in his muscles. His mind was elsewhere, focused, calculating. He had been in worse places than this. Captured behind enemy lines. Locked in cells with no food, no water. Tortured for information he never gave. Compared to those days, this was nothing. His eyes scanned the walls of the pit. The surface was rough but climbable. The problem was the height, at least 10 feet. He would need more than just brute strength to get out of here. Above him, faint footsteps echoed. Someone was approaching. Carter moved fast, scooping up a handful of loose dirt and gripping it tightly. He pressed himself against the wall, waiting. A shadow appeared over the edge of the pit. One of the guards. The same one who had mocked him earlier. He crouched down, grinning. Not so tough now, huh, old man? Carter didn't respond. He just waited. The guard chuckled, then turned slightly to light a cigarette. That was his mistake. In one explosive movement, Carter sprang to life. He launched the handful of dirt straight into the guard's eyes. The man recoiled, cursing, his hands flying up to his face. That split-second distraction was all Carter needed. With a burst of strength, he leapt upward, grabbing the edge of the pit. The guard stumbled back, wiping at his eyes, completely off balance. Carter used his entire body weight to pull himself up, slamming his forearm into the man's throat as he climbed over the edge. The guard choked, gasping for air. Carter didn't give him a chance to recover. He grabbed the man's head and twisted, fast, clean, lethal. The body went limp, collapsing to the ground with a dull thud. One down. Carter crouched and stripped the body of weapons. A pistol, a knife, and, most importantly, a radio. He quickly checked the frequency. Standard cartel communications. He could hear chatter, but no one had noticed the guard was missing yet. Good. He kept low, moving silently through the corridor. He didn't have time to play it safe. He needed to move fast. Outside, the compound was still alive with activity. Guards patrolled lazily, unaware that the man they had thrown into a pit was now hunting them. Carter spotted his first target, a lone guard standing near a supply shed. He moved fast, knife flashing in the dim light. One quick slice across the throat, and the man crumpled soundlessly. Carter dragged the body behind the shed and took the guard's rifle. Now he was armed. The compound was large, but Carter had already memorized the layout. The main building was where Rojas operated from. That's where he needed to go. Keeping to the shadows, he made his way toward the entrance. Two guards stood at the door, deep in conversation. Carter didn't hesitate. He raised the rifle and fired two clean shots, one to each head. The bodies dropped instantly. Now the alarm was raised. Shouts echoed across the compound. Flashlights cut through the darkness. The hunt was on. Carter moved quickly, slipping inside before more guards could arrive. He stayed low, his footsteps silent against the concrete. He needed to find Rojas before the entire place was locked down. Down the hall, a door stood slightly ajar. Voices came from inside. Carter pressed himself against the wall and listened. Find him. Now. Rojas' voice was sharp, filled with rage. Another man responded nervously, Chief, he killed Ramirez. And the men at the entrance. He's armed. Silence. Then Rojas spoke again, his tone deadly calm. Then you better hope you kill him first. Carter smirked. Not likely. He stepped back and kicked the door open. The force sent it crashing against the wall. Inside, Rojas and two guards turned in shock. Carter didn't give them time to react. He fired, one shot, two shots, both guards went down before they could even lift their weapons. Now, it was just him and Rojas. The cartel boss slowly raised his hands, his expression unreadable. Impressive, he admitted. Carter kept the gun trained on him. You should have left me alone. Rojas exhaled, shaking his head. You don't get it, do you? Kill me, and another will take my place. That's how this world works. Carter took a step closer. Then I guess I'll have to make sure no one wants the job. For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed Rojas' face. Carter didn't wait. One shot. A clean, precise bullet straight to the head. Rojas collapsed onto his desk, blood pooling beneath him. The compound was still in chaos. More guards were coming. Carter knew he had limited time. He grabbed a radio and switched to the frequency he had heard earlier. This is Carter. Your boss is dead. If you want to live, I suggest you run. For a moment, nothing but static. Then, panic. Voices shouting, men scrambling. The chain of command was broken. Without Rojas, there was no order. No direction. Some men ran. Others fired blindly. Carter moved through the compound like a ghost, eliminating anyone still foolish enough to stand in his way. The sound of vehicles starting up filled the air. The cartel was falling apart. By the time Carter reached the outer fence, the compound was nearly empty. He had done what he came to do. He climbed into an abandoned truck and started the engine. As he drove away, he didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. The cartel had made a fatal mistake. They had taken the wrong man.